Hey, first of all, thank you for attending this session. Glad to be back with you again. And once again, as you can see, my name is Jim Roach. I'm a business development manager at Cisco, and I belong to what they call the global segment CTO or Chief Technology Office. And I'm more than pleased to have one of our Solution Plus partners come and talk to you today from Itential. And a little bit about Itential. Itential, when I started with automation, particularly with NSO in 2015, one of the first partners that we met after we actually purchased TLF and of course, made it and created the product of NSO was Itential. And they had done a number of work with TLF. And since that time, they have become a Solution Plus partner in the sense that as we go forward with, say, NSO or Cisco type solutions, their product is also on our global pricing list. So as you as partners present solutions or do estimates for your end customers, you can do it, of course, for Cisco products and services. You can do it for Itential product as well. So they're on their price list. And I think that speaks to the close partnership we've had with Itential as far as creating, as you'll see, some graphical interfaces, some exceptional workflow management that their product has been engineered and integrated into NSO deployments. And so without further ado, I'll give it off to Chris and he can take you through the presentation. Chris.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for the time tonight, everybody. And we'll go ahead and just jump in and get started. So for the purpose of the hour, we do have the Q&A panel. So any sort of questions, I definitely would appreciate questions as we go. Whichever one's not speaking, we'll try to keep track of that, and we'll either integrate it with our discussion or answer it back in the Q&A panel. So we have two different demos tonight. We're going to give you some live interaction with the software. So before we get into that, I'll just give you a little bit of background on Itential if you haven't heard of us before, and a little bit about how we think about network automation. And then we'll talk a little bit about kind of the state of the market, and then how we work within the Cisco ecosystem. We can talk about the fact that there's more programmable interfaces coming out every day from a variety of controllers and orchestrators and kind of programmable techniques. And then we'll jump into two different demos. The first demo will be focused a little bit around multi-cloud, and then we'll do some stuff with SD-WAN. So just a quick Itential kind of metrics here. So we are based in the U.S. Out of Atlanta, Georgia. Our customer base has typically followed the adoption of network programmability. As Jim mentioned, I'll talk a little bit about NSO. So we've been working with that technology since 2014. And the idea was really as networks become more programmable, we need to rethink how we build network management applications. And it really gives us an opportunity to rethink how we manage, because we've lived with the CLI for a long time, which was a great invention, but being a human-based interface kind of inhibits our flexibility on how we can build software. So we think that as things have moved, and I can talk a little bit more past tense than I used to, as things have moved towards APIs, it gives us the opportunity to kind of to rethink how we build software for the network. So our typical customer base started with people that were adopting controllers and orchestrators and programmable concepts. So really focused on service providers globally. And then the normal take rate on this type of stuff is it goes from there to kind of banks, hospitals, and then broad-based enterprise support. With the advent of SD-WAN, we've really seen network programmability kind of make its way into all verticals. So we're excited about kind of automation moving forward across a large variety of domains we'll talk about today. So when we think of network automation, the first thing we really think about is this set of guiding principles. And the reason we talk about this is that network automation means a lot to a lot of different people, and kind of aligning on the priorities with network automation seems to always be important as you're communicating with your customers about how they want to attack this problem, because there's obviously a large variety of options out there, especially on a per domain basis. But just maybe a handful I'll highlight today. It might be obvious to this group, but a lot of times we talk about how networks are becoming more complex. We started off with a lot of connectivity-based services. And as we start talking about distributed cloud, we talk about overlays, both in the data center and the WAN. The network is every day becoming more complex, and really the only way to deal with that complexity is to adopt some automation strategies, especially with from a service provider standpoint as we move to distributed cloud, edge, and ultimately 5G. These networks really can't be managed by humans in reasonable ways. So that complexity and the growth and the velocity of change within the network really requires us to lean heavily on automation as a way to manage the ever-changing network. Shifting to the cloud, and we'll do a little bit of a demo today. Networks in the cloud, whether it's a VPC or a VNet or pick your poison, those are just virtual network elements. So we kind of have this movement from physical devices to virtualized devices to cloud consumption models, which is router as a service, for lack of a better term. But a lot of the multi-cloud and cloud consumption models are really aligned with this shift to the cloud, and we'll talk about kind of a little bit how we line that up. And something else we'll talk about today is the fact that we really need a variety of tools to attack this. There's big proponents of open source. There's big proponents of net provided platforms, and we're happy to see kind of more focus on network automation in the marketplace. But ultimately, whether we're talking about immutable stuff in the cloud or whether we're talking about physical devices in the data center, there's specific tools and techniques that we think you're going to want to adopt. And it's really about how do we use the right tool for the right job in those domains, and then how do we tie it together as an end-to-end service. Because services today, as we move forward past connectivity-based services, these services traverse multiple domains. So it's really about the coordinated effort and the coordinated configuration across a variety of domains that really represent the service that the application owner or end user is interested in. So I'll probably leave it at that, and we'll move into some of the other topics. So when we talk about automation, it's very prevalent that customers want to kind of talk about this and under the banner of a journey. So the idea is that you don't wake up one day and the network is automated, but there's really this migration, not in technology necessarily, but this migration in mindset and how we make the network more programmable. And there's really kind of a close alignment between the network becoming more programmable and how automated I can be. So it's really about how programmable the network is. It's about the sources of truth, which were on the guiding principles slide. It's really about how do I federate and talk to these variety of systems, and ultimately how do we automate it as an end-to-end concept. So when we talk to most customers, they say this makes a lot of sense in the sense that their existing network, sometimes referred to as brownfield network, is becoming more programmable, and there's a lot of DevOps and CLI modeling techniques that we can do to make existing CLI-based networks more "quote unquote" programmable. And then the new modern concepts that are being put into the network a lot of times have concepts of controllers and orchestrators built in, or we have prepackaged solutions like SD-WAN, which has a controller in it, or a lot of the cloud networking also has controller-based concepts, and these are more programmable out of the box. So we can treat these platforms as a more API-first type of approach. And the idea here is that, unfortunately, the adoption sometimes from an operations team is like, I have to manage the old stuff, "quote unquote," and I have certain tools and techniques for the existing network, and then I have to manage the new stuff. And SD-WAN comes with an API and a GUI. It doesn't come with a CLI. So I have to have a separate set of tools, possibly to help manage the modern stack. So the idea is the network operations team, unfortunately, sometimes says I have to do double work. I have to manage duplicate stacks. And from an Itential standpoint, and what we think people are driving towards is really this intersection point. How can I make my existing network more programmable? And how can I take the advantage of the most modern techniques with the modern controllers and orchestrators? And how do I build kind of an end-to-end automation concept so that I can have one way of automating my network? And ultimately, when people think about Itential, and the people that adopt the technology most widely think of it as ultimately a network API. So the instrumentation underneath, whether it's a DevOps platform, whether it's something like NSO we'll talk today, or maybe it's directly to the APIs for like an SD-WAN platform, which you'll see in the demonstration. The idea is that the user's agnostic to the implementation specific details, and we can just make requests of the infrastructure. So when we think about the domains that I was referencing, this is kind of how we think about it. We can combine some of these get together or split them back out, but there's a variety of networking domains at play. And the main takeaway here is that rather than managing each of these in silos, we think it's important that we think of the tools and techniques for each of these domains, but ultimately we need to think about how to put them back together, because an application owner that needs IP connectivity and needs changes in a firewall and maybe needs to change workload or cloud connectivity, that request needs to be made as a holistic application request, not necessarily the individual components. So when we think about the Cisco ecosystem, Jim can talk about the variety of components that are involved. And when we get into the integration layer, Itential is pretty proud about the adapter ecosystem we have and the pre-built integrations with a large variety of platforms. We think as an automation platform, we really have to drive the cost to zero to integrate with all of these platforms. So we've worked really hard, and I can talk a little bit about the technology behind how we can auto-generate these interfaces, both for APIs and also at the data instrumentation level. So you'll see, if this team is used to working with a large variety of the modern Cisco ecosystem, you'll find integrations with all of these platforms pre-built and downloadable from our developer site. So when we think about integrating with these domains, I've talked mostly about the network domains, but when we look at the actual automation of network services, when people look at the time and effort spent to make changes to the network, it's interesting to find out that between 80 and 90% of the time typically is spent updating pre-checks and post-checks, copying files around, filling out ServiceNow tickets. It's really this integration with the IT and OSS systems in the service provider domain that really rounds out the automation of the entire scope of the change. So when we think about automation, and you'll see this in the demo, integrating with sources of truth, integrating with ITSM systems, integrating with telemetry or analytics is critical. And once we start thinking about automating and integrating with more than just the network, we start thinking about we're not just restricted to what a human can do during a maintenance window. We can actually do more once we transition some of the activities from a human-centric mindset to a machine-centric mindset. Then we can request the machine do more within the time period provided, and we can wrap APIs around it. So that's what we'll be highlighting today in the demo. So I haven't really talked much about how the guts of Itential work, but at a high level, the important thing to understand, and I've talked a little bit about the integrations, is really it's not just about integrating with APIs. When we talk about integration, the modern way to describe a lot of the metadata associated with APIs is grounded under the slang term Swagger specification, but under the Linux Foundation, it's called the Open API specification. And it basically models the data payloads for each of these systems in JSON schema. So what that allows us to do is auto-generate these interfaces. And it also allows us to build some transformations of the data. So that first bucket of consuming APIs and manipulating the data, like how do I get the data out of ServiceNow and how do I push it into NSO? Typically you'd have to write a Python script or write something that would craft that data in the way that NSO expects it, or craft that data in the way that something like a ServiceNow would expect it. So if we can make that reusable, we can make that configuration instead of code, we can auto-generate that stuff. It really accelerates the ability to automate so that we can spend more time on the actual automation versus just hooking systems together. And then the second bit is really on federation. So the idea there is that as we move to more real-time network services, I can't take copies of everything. So I have to federate it in real time. So what that means is as you see Matt going through the demo, when he clicks on a screen, it's actually making the API calls in the background to get the actual status right now. As we start to virtualize and move to more of network as a service, I can't expect the data I collected an hour ago is still correct. So we have to go get that stuff in real time. So that really kind of is built on the premise of API first. And then ultimately, as we expose it out, we have to make this very easy. Automating across multiple technologies with multiple data models, with multiple APIs can be overwhelming. So when you see Matt going through the demo, you'll see it in a very drag and drop, low code environment. So we really try to use technology to do the heavy lifting on the federation and API consumption and data manipulation, and then expose it in a way that the people that actually understand the network service can build the automation. So we can move to a true DevOps model rather than one person writing down the requirements and sending it off to a dev team to build it in a rigid way. We really have to shorten that cycle, move into more of a DevOps agile type mentality in the networking domain. So I kind of popped on these. The one thing that maybe I didn't talk about that's a little bit worth talking about is just the model consumption. So these robust systems that we're integrating with don't typically give you key value pairs. A lot of the most robust ones, and I'll talk about NSO just for a bit, give you models back. So depending upon the domain you're in, it might be Yang. The DevOps community loves some YAML. Most REST-based interfaces are giving us back JSON, which can be modeled in JSON schema, and Tosca being a subset of that. But from an Itential standpoint, we understand those and we can convert those into JSON schema, which we believe is the modeling language for automation, which allows us to do that kind of drag and drop and transformational approach. So we fully expect, we're not hard coding on top of systems. We've spent a lot of time and invested a lot of R&D in really doing that model manipulation. So the simplest way to think about it is Itential will kind of morph and change itself based upon the models that come through the APIs from the underlying systems. And just a minute on the NSO integration. So we have been working with NSO even prior to Cisco. So deep workings with NSO. So if there's anybody on the phone that that is working projects or has some background and training with that, we've participated at the NSO Dev Days. We work directly with the business unit on regression testing. We talk about features, and the way we look at it is we've worked very hard to make this complement NSO and the rest of Cisco's ecosystem with very little overlap, so that you can expect the two platforms to work together seamlessly. And as new features come in NSO, our perspective is we want you to get the most out of NSO, so we try to use all of the features possible, whether it's templating or service models, Yang discovery, etc. So with that, Matt, I think I'll pass it over to you. But if you want to maybe walk a little bit through what's going to happen in the demo, and then I'll pass the ball.
Will do, Chris. Yes, thank you. So team, for the first demo, as kind of bringing those concepts and areas of focus for us, for Itential, and just in general for automation, what we want to kind of demonstrate, give you kind of visibility to a couple of different things, right? Itential automation platform right in the middle, the capabilities that we provide out of the box, but also the capabilities that can be expanded upon if, when partners like you or customers kind of embrace the platform and extend it, onboard their use cases to realize the value and benefits that they can be realized with automation. So we're dealing with different customers, different segments. We see kind of day in, day out how the automation journey progresses, just starting with small, simple use cases, device configuration changes, management of that, automation of that, then moving into more of a comprehensive, velocity-based use cases when they upgrade software, updating external systems. And that's where this demo kind of is going to showcase. So what you see in this is the combination of, private network, private cloud, where we have a cloud router, CSR, example, CSR 1000V, modeled and maintained, controlled by NSO, and deploying service to that, as well as a native integration to AWS. As Chris mentioned, we are proud of the fact that, the integration should be minimal. It should be straightforward, and consuming APIs every system, modern system supports today, should be kind of relatively quickly onboarded and realized in your automation journey. So we're showing the native AWS VCP, VPC approach to that, to the public cloud integration and making network changes in there. And in addition to that, just to show you what's possible, we also kind of integrated Jira for ticketing, system just to give a way of people to approve changes as they're happening automatically in the network, and also WebEx teams to collaborate, right? To give you, and people are, whether it's a DevOps teams, NetOps teams, operations teams, give them option to receive notification, consume notifications as they come in with the tools of choice. You know, even you'll see an example of the email. So let me jump into the demo system and walk you through this specific use case. So here what you see is the main dashboard of Itential Automation platform. And it's just a collection of applications that we've developed and provided out of the box for addressing multiple areas of automation. You know, you see artifacts, which is our catalog of bringing pre-built automations that we've created in open sources, or open source, and you can onboard that into the system and then jumpstart the automation. But we zoom into automation catalog, which is the kind of an equivalent of self-service portal, and allows operators, engineers to kind of just execute the automation workflows, catalog entries as they're built, designed, and staged. For our demo, we have created the one that is called Hybrid Cloud. And as you can see, it's very clean and straightforward layout, right? The catalog entry includes the workflow and a form. In the form, you see an example on the right. We're gonna kind of execute that manually and then populate information as we're demonstrating the interaction and integrations with different systems. But also we have an opportunity with the catalog, automation catalog, is to give right level of access depending on who's kind of executing automation. So read only, write only, based on groups, and groups can be authenticated with external authentication authorization systems such as LDAP, Radius, and others. So that, you know, that gives customers, partners also view to, you know, lock down if needed, who can access, who can execute changes from the catalog, but also an opportunity to maybe work specific automation tasks as the automation kind of executes. The other piece to mention is that we can run those catalog entries automatically by execution from within the platform. These automations can be called from external. So we're exposing APIs to consume all those catalog entries and automations externally. So we've seen customers embracing that model when they have their portals, their systems, and integrating to us, executing the automations externally as well. And we do have a scheduling built in. So let's say we need to create audits or some type of config checks every night, every week to provide right visibility to the network systems that we're automating. Those automations can be scheduled and run ongoingly, you know, in repeated fashion, ongoingly basis. So let's take this this demo and then change automation catalog entry here, as you can see what we can do, what's possible. So in two sections of this form, we've staged the top section, which is the public cloud, focusing on the Amazon AWS VPC network creation and change. And the bottom one is the network change configuration on the private cloud, managed through NSO, modeled through NSO, and delivered to the on-prem cloud services router. So let's just populate, and I'll show you exactly what we're doing. You have options in forms to populate variables, so end users, operators don't necessarily have to fill them. They can just be presented, and allows to simplify the data input, and also, you know, removes the error-prone type of approaches when you have to type it in. So these can be statically populated, they can be dynamically populated. Chris mentioned, you know, pretty much anything we do in our platform is JSON-based, from schema and giving you access to creating schemas with tool sets, as well as populating forms and creating forms dynamically as schema definitions and JSON definitions as well. So they can be exportable, they can be movable between systems and different instances, between the development environment, staging environment, and production as well. So in this form, we'll pick the West region. We can also select what type of region we want to and environment make that change. So we just pick, we'll be brave, we'll pick production one for this one. Resource, right? So all those, and as you can see, the stars kind of indicating what's required for this automation to be executed. So we have to populate that information at, you know, at the execution time. And then we'll just make a simple change here just so we can track it with IP address. And it's a simple host route, but it's not limited to the only host route change, right? It could be a prefix, a series of prefixes. This form can be expanded to multiple inputs when it comes to network addresses in this case. And then it's customizable to specific customer or use case and likings. We'll make the name for this service. Pick the device. So again, federated information, as Chris mentioned, right? We're not collecting, we're not keeping our own inventory of devices. These are the cloud services routers that NSO has them in CDB and keeps them in sync. We're just federating that and populating the form with the known devices. We'll add the prefix name and we'll keep the mask and then target, and we just execute that change. So what's going to happen is, effective from the catalog, we executed automation, and now behind it, we have series of tasks that we've designed this automation to perform. So let's look through what's happening in the background. We can real time in a visual layout kind of explain how we, with low code, minimal code, automated specific tasks to create network in the public cloud and the private cloud. And in addition to that, integrate notification systems to WebEx teams, as an example, and creating tickets in Jira. So if we zoom in, you'll see a couple of things in the canvas. So this is drag and drop canvas when we're designing the automation, and you're looking at the running, executed now, real-time automation happening. So as you can see, green tasks, they mean it's automated execution, and it moves on as soon as the input is collected and output is generated. And then we have also operator tasks, and you see the transitions where we can merge, concatenate, create payloads dynamically as we providing information in, and send the information out to interact with external systems. And examples here, as you can see, a Jira ticket being created, and then WebEx Teams entry also being created. So if we go into the WebEx Teams, you can see I just executed that automation using WebEx Team as a collaboration tool, providing the necessary information for the team that uses that WebEx Team space, what's happening, right? So we pick the right region, we pick the host IP, route IP address, for the public cloud, and now we have the information for the private cloud. We also, at the runtime, in contextual approach, created a ticket with Jira system from the ticketing perspective. And this gives us, another example how we integrate, how we're consuming Jira native API methods and functions, and incorporate that to the workflow, right? To the automation that now gives you velocity of what you can do. Not only automate the task at hand of creating a network in a public cloud or a private cloud, but also now automate the process, right? Automate the handoff to the operations team, giving the visibility, what's happening, what's going on, and so they can kind of keep track how things are progressing. And then this Jira link ticket will give us a link and then dynamic, kind of view to the ticket that was created, and also an opportunity, as you can see back to the workflow, we are pausing right here, right? That the workflow is not progressing because we're looking into input that comes from a Jira ticket. The ticket has to be in progress before we resume and then progress the automation. So we've seen customers that they are confident, they've done testing and development, and they don't need to have interventions with external systems. They kind of execute automations without intervention. But we have customers that cross team boundaries. They want to have updates across every single step of the workflow. And this is one example how we do that, right? External integration through adapter, and an example of ticketing system as Jira. And then let's kind of kick that off, make the ticket and request in progress, and then keep that going. Also, what we've done here is, as you can see, for the people and teams, engineering teams, DevOps teams, if they use email as their messaging platform, right, and notification platform, that notification also can be sent as an email. So you have a plethora of different things that you can incorporate in the in the entire workflow. And then since we've done that, it kind of the evaluation and logic in the workflow, right? With the zero code, right? We just kind of providing evaluation and checking what's going on and how things are progressing. We can go into the details of this automation and then kind of see where that progress of that automation is, right? So we kind of checked a couple of times. We waited for the progress and it's still kind of in that pending state. We want to make sure that ticket is acknowledged before we start and automate the next step. And then this is all done programmatically. So systems to system without kind of intervention and without need to input, right? We're just automating that process. And that, as you can see, the workflow kind of progressed. Now we realize that there is a ticket already in progress. We're moving into, and then let's zoom in to see exactly what's happening. So we either created also Slack entry in the Slack channel just to update another team of what's going on. But now we have two parallel paths going on. One is the kind of a hierarchical approach to a modular approach to the workflow, and now we're executing just a child job, a sub workflow that takes care of the AWS route modification, right? And it's going to go take the snapshot before and after, pre and post, and then kind of present that to the end user and operator. We're also doing that in parallel towards the NSO. So you can see we're taking the pre-check, applying that to the payload of the necessary change from the form, applying that to the payload of the NSO service instantiation, saving, posting, committing that service, and then capturing the post check. So that's being executed in the background. And then as a step for the operator to validate that information is processed properly, we're kind of giving the manual task and capability to show the changes that we're making and how they kind of being captured, what we're adding, right? And this is the host network that we've kind of selected in the form, inputted it in, and you can see that this is the brand new addition to the AWS route change in VPC. So we can proceed and continue that automation as we progressing through steps, right? And you can see real time which steps are within the workflow we are, and then what's happening as we're moving through those steps. So that's how, as you can see, very minimal, sometimes not even needed human intervention. We're just showing that for kind of view of how you manage, how you control it. Also an opportunity, right? So when we look at automations, we allow people to not only deploy configuration changes, system updates, any type of kind of intended automations, but also giving them a way to roll back, right? We've seen day in, day out with the customers today, something that didn't go well, or they need to roll back the change, right? They don't have to manually undo, right? We have the logic that we collected information variables throughout the process. We can roll that back, right? So we can reset and bring it back to the initial state. But for the purpose of this, we just execute and proceed to see, so you can see the completion and then view to what's happening, right? And this is just the second set of view what happened on the private cloud, right? So this is a routing table from the CSR router showing you that we added that 10.6.10 host network, and then it's now part of that configuration and committed, with the life cycle of that service managed by NSO. So that kind of gives us a view of entire workflow, right? Automated where possible, with manual entries when needed, integration with the native interfaces to collaboration systems, ticketing systems, public cloud systems, and as you can see, within 8 minutes, we completed change in both private and public network, and now as a result, we'd also automatically close the ticket, right, in Jira. So it's done, ticket is closed, the workflow completed successfully, and we're back to automated changes being intended. So that was part of the first demo. I'll give control back to Chris to walk us through a couple of examples, and then we'll just resume with the second demo as a follow-up.
Thanks, Matt. Hopefully we're back on the PowerPoint slide. So, you know, the first demo was dominated by a lot of integrations. We definitely just wanted to give a little bit of this. There's a reference at the end to our developer site. These integrations are all populated on a GitLab repo. So our customers, even from within the platform, can navigate and install these. So the products also hooked up to those repositories online, so you can install them dynamically. You know, it's always amazing the number of different technologies. Once it becomes not just network, it becomes network plus systems plus pipelines plus cloud. There's a lot of ecosystems, and you know, it's really table stakes to be able to integrate with your systems, you know, your customers' systems. Before you can automate, we have to have access to these things. So it's really foundational to be able to integrate with these platforms. And like I said before, we've worked really hard to drive that cost to zero. So we don't have time today, but you can go to the developer site. You can give it a postman collection. You can auto-generate these interfaces, or you can also just navigate and peruse kind of the ecosystem that are there. And our existing customers and our development team are always working on kind of populating that with the latest and greatest of what you guys are working with. So quite a good ecosystem at this point. And then the other part, not just the integrations that are kind of highlighted on the right-hand side, but we've also open sourced our pre-built automations. So the pre-builts are made up of the adapters or integrations. The newest thing that we just launched in the last week was data transformation. So there's also transformations, which we don't have time to go through today, but that's important. And then ultimately these pre-built automations, which sometimes people would reference as use cases. So the idea is, you know, we put the platform in place, you download the things that you want to connect it to, and then you have a bunch of use cases that you can download and just hit the run button. So, you know, doing things like provisioning of service models in NSO, making changes in DNS systems, doing software upgrades, EVPN services, et cetera. So the idea is we're really hyper-focused on the consumability. You know, for a long time, it was having the set of features required to support automation, but it's really about making this consumable. Easy maybe is a strong word, but you know, the complexity of your environment drives the complexity of your attempts to automate. And the only way to handle that complexity is to compartmentalize and build some abstractions. And we've tried to do that in a meaningful way. And just before we get into the second demo, because this is also going to be heavily integration focused, I do want to say there'll be other webinars and other collateral around kind of day 0, day 1, day 2, lifecycle management, golden configs, compliance and remediation. We do all that stuff through NSO and other systems as well. So there'll be some other webinars on that, but we wanted to be kind of full-throated in the integration effort here. So the first demonstration was very focused on the cloud ecosystem. And the second one is going to be focused on a different set of integrations centered around SD-WAN. So Matt, do you want to give a quick overview of the highlights, and then I'll turn it back over to you to walk through the demo?
Yes, we'll do it, Chris. Thank you. So, team, for the second demo, this is much more comprehensive automation that we've built to showcase to you kind of a typical SD-WAN process, right, being automated. And in this example, it's SD-WAN branch turnup, right? So again, using the automation platform, using the catalog as we've kind of walked you through already, I'll show you how we design the workflow a little bit more to what's available from a design perspective. But you know, key thing here, right? API-driven, low-code, native integration to multiple systems here across multiple domains. So from the SD-WAN perspective, we kind of assuming Meraki, in this case, APIs, integrating with the dashboard, creating context and creating a network, assigning a device into that environment, and also as a result of integrations to those systems listed on top, right? We're creating a ticket, we're allowing end user to manage their change control through a ServiceNow integration and populating contextual information at runtime. You know, again, collaboration example of notification, what's happening, how things are progressing through email, WebEx Teams collaboration tools, but also simple things like, tracking the message, the delivery of the device, right? When is it on site? So we can't automate this process again holistically end to end. Is just a simple example of FedEx tracking and populating the ticketing information there as a result automatically. And then Netbox, Chris mentioned before, right? We're not just coming in to replace the processes or systems that are already in. We're augmenting and allowing the acceleration of automation to be kind of embedded, right? Leverage the multiple sources of truth that's typically going to be in the network, IP addressing, network creation addressing, naming standards, and federate that data when needed, right? Keeping access to the inventory, providing the information at runtime to execute the automation in more streamlined, more system-to-system kind of way. So that's what you're going to see. Let's quickly pivot to the demo, and I'll walk you through, some additional details how we make this work. So back, we follow the same script, the self-service kind of entering the catalog. In this case, we're going to turn up the SD-WAN branch, right? So we have another entry for that in the catalog with the form. We'll go quickly execute that and to get this running, right? So again, form populated based on needs, right? So we can use the same reusable automation and the logic that's being directed to the right controller, right system based on the selection from the end user. So we'll pick Meraki as a vendor here. We'll keep the network, demo network, email address just for my notification. We'll populate the serial number of the device that we want to kind of provision as a turn up and allocate that in the Meraki dashboard, and we'll kick that off. We're going to be a couple of minutes to go through it, but while that automation is executed, I'll give you a glimpse of kind of a view back from the dashboard to another app in the Itential automation platform, and this is Automation Studio. So this is the design environment. This is the environment when we kind of enabling designers, engineers, DevOps engineers, automation engineers to create their intended automation logic and workflow, right? So what you're looking at in the middle is the design canvas that it's relatively simple to follow, easy to drag and drop tasks that we have pre-built in the system, as well as enabled by interface and then adapter integration, as you can see here in the Meraki example, deleting the networks, creating networks, and then adding that to the canvas, building the logic as you would typically do in automation, creating input, taking input from the form, merging, concatenating, doing some type of operational procedures on the data by providing task in view, as you can see, logical progressions. Error handling is done by either evaluations, fallouts, examples of giving a manual task in the form of the blue tasks here, operators visibility to make a decision, what do you want to do if something doesn't progress as designed. But this is where we create all workflows, right? A design canvas up here. And we're collecting them as a list of different automations, right? We have a list of forms that follow the same process. We can create forms, build them, command templates to do tasks or reuse tasks, whether they're, simple iOS show commands or more sophisticated network operating commands, across multi-vendors. So you can see examples from iOS, iOS XR, GenOS. Really these are the building blocks that we kind of using our artifacts to create meaningful intent-based automations. Analytic templates, even consuming artifacts that you or customers created, like playbooks, Ansible playbooks, Python scripts, they all become part of this cohesive catalog of artifacts that we can use and apply to automations. So let's check on our executed job and then see what's happening there. So we can step through the logic that we built in there. So with the with the execution of that task, what we've done is did a couple of things. Use the source of truth for the subnet allocation. So that's the netbox integration. I'll show you how we requested automatically IP address and network name for that. We checked the FedEx tracking as just a simple REST call to populate the ticketing. We created ServiceNow requests, so you can see a sub workflow, child job, just to create a ticket. And then we started also, kind of populating notifications through the WebEx Teams, as you see example here, and then the meaningful contextual information up here. And then also, access to the ServiceNow ticket. So, in order to proceed with this change, I'm going to work the ticket and then kind of create an approval process and kick that off. So this, again, another example of not only integration to the systems that are in place for change management and ticketing, but also providing the right level of information when needed, right, where the ticket is created and populating that contextually. So let's just kind of execute the change by acknowledging it and approving it. And this just follows, whatever the process customers may have, right? Just so the automation doesn't change necessarily what they do, but maybe accelerates how they do it. And then let's schedule it to implement, and then we'll kick that out. So also, you saw the email, ServiceNow request. So every step throughout the process can be documented, can be notified. Right teams are using their tools of preference. Also, I want to show you, in the Meraki dashboard, right? So the native interface for the Meraki administrator, right? We don't have necessarily yet data populated. So we're going to see that example coming in. But from the subnet and network request from Netbox, as you can see, we just reserved the 10.2 network, and we assigned the demo network description and name, so we can see it populated that in the Meraki dashboard. So working the ticket through, now you can see there is yet another intervention, a manual task saying, okay, the change was approved. Let's now give an opportunity for operator to acknowledge that we have the right approvals in place. We're just proceeding in the change. As you can see, everything is tracked within the execution. You can see who approved, if it's a user assigned task, what time from the auditing perspective each task took place, and then you can see progression through what we're doing as executing the automation. And again, you have the detailed view, you have the visual view as things are progressing on the canvas as well. So you always have visibility to what stage you're at in the automation, how is that progressing, what tasks or inputs need to be added, and you can even validate it as those tasks are completed. Is the right input collected? Is the right output collected? That could be part of the design of the workflow, could be also troubleshooting as part of the execution. As you can see, we keep going through multiple child jobs, right? So we've modularized the workflow to reuse specific functionality and automations as modular approach, right? So creating a ticket, assigning a network, creating a branch network, all that could be modular and reusable. So the velocity of the workflow and automation is kind of adaptable, right? It's helping also create that catalog of different automations and not always start from scratch, not always build the new automations from the blank canvas. It's just using, templates, using workflows, forms as they come in, and then just accelerate, automations of different intended use cases. So as you can see, we went through the entire flow, multiple systems, multiple integrations. We're at the last step of the automation. We can go back, look into the Meraki dashboard, refresh that. You're going to see demo network created, a device allocated, updates in the email. Everything was completed. We claimed the device, right? So notification as part of it. And ticket automatically closed, right, as part of it. So not only, kind of native integration, but just the process automation to achieve the speed and velocity in the execution. And then as a last step, right, this is example which we saw in the first demo. Let's say we don't want to keep that change. Something happened, let's roll back, right? We don't need to kick off another automation job. We just can use the contextual data that we created and automated at runtime, and then kind of applied it here. So in this case, I'm going to select to roll back. And as you can see, we're going to use those native interfaces, adapters, to reach out to the systems that we've integrated with, and then clean up the databases, clean up the sources of truth. First one is going to be network in Netbox, right? We released that. The 10.2 network is no longer used. It's active to be used again. We're cleaning up the Meraki allocation, so that demo network got removed programmatically, and we're back to square one, right? So not only automating, deploying kind of intended use case throughout the system, but also allowing you to roll back. And as you can see, the entire rollout of and turn up of the remote branch effectively took 8 minutes plus, right? With different integrations, automations, and interactions with different systems. So that's part of that demo. I also want to kind of flash the website that Chris kind of mentioned. A lot of different video examples are here, a lot of different resources. You can see what pre-built collections we've already published. So partners like you, customers, can really adapt and then and onboard the different use cases by just downloading these open source artifacts, right, and collections, or even adapters. As you can see, we have adapter builder that allows us to create new integrations if they don't exist by consuming a native API. Chris mentioned Swagger document, Postman collections, open API spec, and then creating adapter to give you yet another integration point, and then reach out with your automations farther away into different external systems, whether they're network controllers, orchestrators, ticketing system, management systems, right? That give us the speed to accelerate automation deployments. So that concludes my demo. Chris, I'll give the ball back to you to take us home.
All right, we have 5 minutes left. Jim knew we were going to use all of the time, right, Jim? So
absolutely.
So I know this team is focused a lot on service providers, so we did want to just talk a little bit. Some of these are single domain, fairly straightforward things like DNS, and then there's fairly complex things like mobile edge compute, small cell, 5G deployments. And I was trying to answer questions in the Q&A as we went. It comes down to some of the simple stuff simple and some of the hard stuff's hard. So as the number of systems increases, simple things like Cisco's offering pcert APIs so that we can check on the latest patches that we might be deploying in the network in real time. So I can do that within my automation. Once we start to think about automating, it's more and more APIs from more and more systems. And then I think about fallout scenarios. And then when we start talking about multiple domains, it's really around creating an automation platform so that we can work kind of on the factory versus working on the products. We've really been hyper-focused on building connectivity-based products, but it's a lot of times about building the automation factory so we can spit out the products, and the velocity that we can support the business and support digital transformation is ever increasing. So a lot of service provider use cases, and I think next one was a couple customers that have spoken publicly on this. So I think Deutsche Telekom was at the last NSO Dev Days. I think Liberty Global was at the last Cisco Live, and then Telecom Italia had done some press as well. So, there's in the service provider world and large enterprise world, definitely, the whole in production at scale for a long period of time. Proud of the performance of the system and all the stuff that you would expect from a mature platform. So if you do peruse that developer site, you'll see the level of documentation. Everything's on our developer site, minus the ability to open up a support ticket. So If you want to see the change log for the last release of the software, it's all published. So very, very transparent on the developer site. So ultimately, if you guys have any questions, we wanted to make sure we gave you kind of a full array of people to contact. So from, if somebody's interested in just kicking the tires, we have a Kubernetes instance under the banner of an Itential Academy 101. It's like 4 or 6 hours. It's just some video and some training with the Kubernetes instance. So you can go to academy.itential.com to sign up for that. The developer hub we talked about, and then clearly, Jim talked about some of the Solutions Plus partnerships. So all of our documentation on the Cisco Solution Plus website, as well as contacts for other people. So maybe with that, Jim, I'll turn it back to you with just a few minutes remaining to help close it up.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Thank you both to you as well as to Matt for the presentation. And thank you to the audience as well. This has been a long session, but there's a lot of stuff to cover. And hopefully you've seen, of course, the Itential solution, and as well as you can follow up with them if you have any further questions or something you'd like some further discussion on.